Now let's do some Solidity exercises. We are going to do our first contract called greeting. And we will learn about the layout of smart contracts, data types, and variables. Okay, and let's clean a bit the environment. Okay, and I'm also gonna delete this contract. And here I'm gonna say new file. We are gonna call it greeting.sol. Okay, now we're gonna write down the greeting contract, and the first thing that we need to add is what is called as the pragma. The pragma is an instruction that tells to the Solidity compiler which version of Solidity we want to compile this particular smart contract. Here we are telling to the compiler that we want to use the version 0.8.7. Okay, now we are gonna add the keyword contract followed by the name, in this case greeting. Okay, let's see the compiler, and if you see, there is a small warning. This warning is telling us that we are missing an SPDX license identifier. Okay, so what is exactly that? Let's find the answer by going to the Solidity documentation. Okay, then we go to the layout of a Solidity source file, and there is a section for the SPDX license identifier. The documentation says that every source file should start with a comment indicating its license. This is something that the Solidity compiler encourages, and the main reason is because remember that smart contracts are in a blockchain, so it's visible for everyone. And in fact, one of the things that protocols normally do is they verify the contracts. So all the people that is interacting with the contracts, they can see what exactly the contract is doing. For example, let's look for Uniswap. We go for Uniswap docs, and in fact we can see the contracts, deployments, and here you can see the addresses of all the contracts. For instance, let's check the Uniswap v3 factory. If we go to Etherscan, we can look for that address and check how in Etherscan there is a tab that has a small arrow that means is verified. Okay, and then we can see the code because this code was verified by the Uniswap protocol and then is open source and visible for everyone. So by having the license, this can also help, as the Solidity documentation is explaining, this can have legal problems with copyright. Okay, so let's simply copy this part. We put it here, and if you want to know more, you can find more info here to see what particular license will your project require. Okay, let's just continue with the greeting contract, and then what we are gonna do is we declare a function and we are gonna call it say hello. Okay, and then we need to specify the visibility of the function. In fact, let's go to the documentation, and there should be, let me find it, function visibility. Here we have. Okay, so functions in Solidity, they have different visibility. As you can see, the syntax is you use the function keyword, then the name of your function, then the visibility specifier. So we can have public, private, external, and internal. Internal, as the name suggests, only visible within the smart contract. Public is used if the function that we are creating has to be visible externally, but also internally. So if another function is calling a particular function, then it has to be public. However, if there is no function calling a particular function, then we can just do it external, which means only visible externally. Okay? In our case, actually, since we don't have any other function, makes sense to use the external. Okay? Alright. And then we need to say returns. You can see the syntax. And then we need to specify which data type we are returning. Solidity has different data types. It has value types like booleans, integers, fixed point numbers, address, and reference types like structs, arrays, also mapping types. Okay? In our case, we want to return, actually, when we say hello, we're going to call this function, we want to return hello world as the classical first program. Okay? How do we return this value? So we need to find a data type that can help us to do that. And it seems that string literals can help us. So string literals is actually what we are looking for. Now, which exact string literal value is going to depend, because in Solidity we have the bytes 1 and bytes 32. That means that we can store information or string literals as bytes. It will depend the size that the string literal has. But we can also use a string. Okay, so let's use a string. Let's say we want you to return a string. And then here we simply say return hello world. Okay, now there is a small problem. Data location must be memory for return parameter. Okay, so since we are returning a string, the compiler is telling us that we should specify in which data location is the string. So we just simply say memory, and now we have one more warning. And the warning is because it is telling us that the function state mutability can be restricted to pure. So in Solidity, we have multiple types of functions. Okay? One of them is pure functions. Another one are view functions. We have also fallback functions, and so on. We will review more details about it, but for the moment, let's say, what is a pure function? A pure function is a function that doesn't access the state of a contract. In the next exercise, we're gonna check how do we store information in a contract. For the moment, this contract is basically not storing any data. We are simply gonna call the contract, and this contract is gonna simply generate this string literal, and then it's gonna return to us. But this value is not stored in any place, okay? It only exists here. So for that reason, because it's not accessing the storage, we say that this is a pure function, okay? And it's compiling properly. All right, then let's simply deploy this contract. In Remix, we can go to the deploy and run transactions. We click deploy, and as you can see, now we have a greeting instance. Okay, so what we can do now is call the function by clicking this button, say hello, and check the value that we are receiving. Okay, well, this was our first contract. Now let's do the simple storage.